To understand the broader context, in this lesson, we're going to look over the history of DeFi and how we arrived where we are now. We're going to break this up into 3 time frames: before 2020, during 2020, and 2021. While Bitcoin gave us the blockchain, in some ways it was also the very first DeFi project. Bitcoin is a decentralized store of value and payment network, both of which are key components to finance. But it wasn't until smart contracts were enabled on Ethereum that the real meat and potatoes of DeFi were possible. We'll learn more about the layers of DeFi and how they're built in later lessons, but the main point is that DeFi needs a smart contract platform to build upon, and Ethereum was the first to have that capability. Ethereum allows for the creation of decentralized applications, or dApps. This unleashed a flood of innovation, and among this was the Maker protocol. Maker was founded in 2014 before the Ethereum mainnet went live, but it wasn't until Ethereum was launched in July of 2015 that Maker could actually work. Development on Maker took quite a while, but it launched towards the end of 2017 and is often considered the first true DeFi protocol, or at least one of them. Maker is a money market and stablecoin combo, and I actually did a full explainer video on it in my YouTube channel, so you can check that out after this video from the link below. Whether Maker is actually the first DeFi protocol is up for consideration, but it was certainly one of the earliest pioneers. Another early pioneer was EtherDelta, the first attempt at a working decentralized exchange. And I say attempt because trading on EtherDelta was painful to say the least. They attempted to build a DEX built around order books, but this was very difficult to do peer-to-peer without the liquidity pools that we have now. In late 2017, EtherDelta was hacked, and the attacker took over the front-end website and forwarded all traffic to a phishing site that stole funds from users. Not long after that, the founder was charged with running an unregulated securities exchange by the SEC, and that was pretty much the end of EtherDelta. Once again, this touches on what I said in the last lesson, where DeFi protocols must either be fully decentralized or fully compliant. The collapse of EtherDelta happened right around the peak of the ICO boom, but leading up to that, many other major DeFi protocols actually started out as ICOs. Projects like Aave, Haven, which then rebranded to Synthetics, Bancor, Kyber Network, and a bunch more. After the peak of the 2017 cycle, and the total value locked in DeFi surpassed $100 million, the bear market hit, and most of the ICO projects wouldn't survive. But these major protocols continued building. We also had 2 of the most important projects launch in the middle of the bear market: Compound Finance and Uniswap. I'll get to Compound later, but Uniswap launched the end of 2018 and popularized a new model for decentralized exchanges: automated market makers. This was an absolute game changer, but it wasn't until later that it actually picked up traction. The total value locked in DeFi surpassed $6 billion at the end of 2018, right around when Bitcoin capitulated to around $3,000. Then, throughout 2019, the building continued. We were still recovering from the bear market, and there wasn't as much attention directed at the industry. Maker changed their single collateral DAI to multi-collateral DAI. Again, you can learn about that in the MakerDAO explainer video. And the total value locked dropped down below $5 billion before recovering to over $8 billion by the end of the year. Then, things rapidly changed in 2020. In the first quarter of 2020, as the pandemic took hold and we saw US markets crashing, the crypto market came down with it. March 12th, 2020, now known as Black Thursday, saw a tremendous sell-off in the markets. That was the day Bitcoin lost around 50% of its value, falling from over $7,400 to about $3,800. But another important lesson from that day came from MakerDAO. I'll briefly summarize what happened to MakerDAO here. Let's say I deposit ETH into the Maker protocol and I take out a loan in the DAI stablecoin. The way it works is I have to deposit more collateral than the dollar value I borrow. Until I pay back that loan, I have to make sure that the dollar value of my collateral stays above 150% of the loan amount. So if I borrow $100, I have to make sure that I always have at least $150 worth of ETH. If the price of ETH drops, I have to add more to compensate. Generally, people play it safe by depositing 2 or 3 times as much collateral as they're borrowing, because if my collateral value hits that 150% mark, it could be liquidated. And here's how liquidations were designed. Keepers are people constantly on the look for loans that hit that liquidation threshold. When they find one, they have the opportunity to bid on that collateral amount. The winning bidder receives the collateral, pays off the loan, keeps the fee, and returns the rest to the borrower if there's anything left. But this isn't actually what happened, because on Black Thursday, the ETH network was congested, and the software that keepers were using didn't increase gas prices. So none of their transactions got through, and there were no liquidations that happened. Until someone realized they could manually raise the gas on their transactions and be the only one bidding on all this collateral. They bid $0 and received about $8 million worth of ETH. The Maker protocol still had enough collateral for all outstanding DAI, but it was now below their risk threshold. So they auctioned off more Maker tokens to compensate. Minting so many tokens at once brought the Maker price from about $500 down to less than $200. But there was a much bigger issue relating to Maker's dependency on oracles that I'll cover later when we talk more about protocol risks. The whole event on Black Thursday was a sobering wake-up call that illustrates the need for robust defenses and very thoughtful checks and balances in any protocol. Ultimately, MakerDAO fixed the issues, came out stronger in the kind of decentralized, anti-fragile way that we'd expect from a DAO. The market actually recovered quickly from such a severe downturn that March, and by May, things were picking up again in a big way. This led to what we now call DeFi summer, and it was largely triggered by compound finance. Compound is another money market, but it differs from MakerDAO in a few ways. The biggest is that Compound would reward borrowers and lenders with comp tokens on top of what they earn, and thus yield farming was created and DeFi summer began. Compound's reward and governance model was wildly successful and prompted many other projects to copy them with some minor tweaks. This was an important moment because the digital financial stack of DeFi was forming. Composability became a key consideration, and then everything went into hyperdrive. With yield farming taking off, the race was on to find which projects would offer the best yield for lending and borrowing and staking, and this led to the massive success of another project created by Andre Cronje, Yearn Finance. Yearn is an automatic yield optimizer. That means it tracks the yields of various DeFi protocols and automatically puts capital into the ones with the best yield. It's something that would not be possible without the composability and interoperability that DeFi offers. This brilliant protocol also drew a lot of attention because it had a fair launch. No tokens for VCs or the team or the developers, and the only way to get tokens was to use the protocol and participate in liquidity mining. The community response to this led the value locked in Yearn to surpass $600 million, and the token price went from $6 to over $30,000 in a couple months. There was a ton of experimenting going on during DeFi summer. All kinds of new projects came out of it, from rebase tokens like Ampleforth, which adjust the supply daily in order to keep the price of a token at $1, to YAM protocol, which took code from various protocols, patched it together over the course of 10 days, and developed a rebasing stablecoin similar to Ampleforth, but with its own unique touch. And as you can imagine, people were very skeptical of YAM protocol. After all, it was tossed together in less than 2 weeks with code that had not been audited, so of course people were skeptical. Right? Right? Wrong. In less than a day, YAM had accumulated over $500 million in locked value, and then a single line of code created a critical bug in the smart contract which permanently locked $750,000 of user funds, and that basically meant the end of YAM. It's still doing stuff, but it's the end of it. But the food DeFi craze was only just beginning. Most of them are not worth mentioning, so I'm not going to mention them, but a big one stands out, and that's SushiSwap. At the time, Uniswap had captured a ton of liquidity and adoption, but it didn't have a token yet. SushiSwap copied Uniswap's code and forked it and created a governance token for it. They then incentivized liquidity providers to switch over to their DEX to earn Sushi tokens in addition to earning trading fees. Sushi was highly successful at this, and they captured over $1 billion worth of liquidity from Uniswap in what is now called a vampire attack. This forced Uniswap to launch their own token earlier than planned by allowing any wallet who had used Uniswap to claim tokens directly. Uniswap also launched their own liquidity mining program to incentivize liquidity providers to come back, and they were largely successful in doing so. But both Uniswap and SushiSwap, they remained successful DEXs with several $1 billion of liquidity locked in their pools. That rounded out the DeFi summer, and after several months of explosive growth, the markets took a big red turn leading into DeFi winter. But even though many of these protocols and tokens lost 70% or more of their value, the total value locked in DeFi continued increasing and ended the year with almost $25 billion in locked value. And that brings us to this year. And this last section will be less of a historical perspective and more of a look at where we are now. The biggest change this year from previous years that I want to focus on is that DeFi has started gaining traction on platforms other than Ethereum. And this is largely due to Ethereum's complete inability to scale to the number of users. The scaling issue is exacerbated by the price of Ethereum rising. So even if you're paying the same amount of gas for a transaction as in 2020, you're paying significantly more in dollar terms. And if you have questions about the Ethereum gas prices and everything, I did a video on that last year, which you can also check out, and it'll be linked below. Several protocols have launched to either alleviate this or are direct competitors to Ethereum. As far as layer 2 scaling goes, Polygon, which is formerly known as Matic, leads the pack, with XDAI following suit. And as far as direct competitors go, the biggest ones to come out have been Binance Smart Chain, which doesn't really qualify as DeFi since it's basically controlled by Binance, Avalanche, Solana, and most recently Cardano. In a way, we can think of Polkadot as a competitor, but it's more of a bridge to connect many blockchains. Still a competitor in a way though, as now many projects are building on Polkadot's substrate framework rather than Ethereum's virtual machine. However, Ethereum still stands out as number one for a few key reasons. It has far more liquidity than any competitor, it has far more developers working on it, and dApps already built upon it, and this gives it network effects. A big part of the benefits of DeFi come from protocols being interoperable and composable with each other. You can take out a loan on Compound, exchange it for another token on SushiSwap, and then yield farm with it on Yearn all in one transaction. Until the other platforms build a more robust DeFi ecosystem, they're going to have a hard time competing. That said, Polkadot aims to bridge blockchains together with their parachains. Cosmos connects blockchains with their inter-blockchain communication protocol, so we'll have to see how this plays out. I know that that's a lot of information to consider, and I hardly touched the surface. In reality, there's far more going on in DeFi than anyone can keep track of. We're in a position where every new idea can and probably will be tried. Some projects will launch and immediately fail, others will launch, gain success and adoption for a time, and then fail, but a few will gain super dominance, and those could end up maintaining their position at the top for decades or even centuries potentially. That is why it is so important to learn as much as we can so that we can be prepared for this future. The protocols that will win in the end will solely be decided by which ones gain the most adoption. No matter what the benefits one has over the other, the only thing that matters in the end is adoption. And I personally hope it also ends up being one that is the most decentralized and fair. Now I know I missed some important events in DeFi's history, so your assignment for this lesson is two things. First, find out where the term DeFi originated, and then go out and find another important event or protocol that I didn't mention enough or at all, and tell us why it should be considered as an important part of DeFi's history. Maybe I should have mentioned certain hacks or a regulatory event that'll have profound impact. It's not up to me to write DeFi's history, so in true decentralized spirit, let's talk about it in the forum, and then down the line, we'll review this lesson and add it so that we can document DeFi's history together. Maybe we'll even make a DAO focused on this. You tell me.